Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Today, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by my brother, Angel Millar. He's my brother from another mother, someone who I love dearly, and someone who I have shared this journey with. And I'm grateful for the grand architect of the universe, for all of us encountering each other in our lives as we walk each other home. Brother Angel is a master and an initiate of many paths in England and here in the USA, of many different schools of thoughts and philosophies. And he is someone that I have looked up to in these times of chaos that we're living in, to find inspiration, to find hope, to find the aspects of who am I, what am I here for, what did God send me to this world for, those kind of things. And Brother Angel has been a godsend in helping me find those answers. He's the author of the new book, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, Being a Man in an Age of Chaos, which I highly recommend that you get this, as it will help you in your studies. And also, when I first became a Mason in 2016, it was right around that time that Brother Angel released this book with the crescent and the compass. And this book also helped me in many ways because at that time, I was realizing what is it about Islam and Freemasonry that connects it together. And I was trying to seek a validation for my path in many ways. So Brother Angel in that book also helped me in many ways. So in today's discussion, we will talk about his new book, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, and how we can basically maintain that balance in this age of chaos. So without further ado, my brother Angel Millar.
Thanks very much. And you've been an inspiration as well. So it's definitely mutual.
Thank you, brother. I wanted to ask you, Brother Angel, in today's world right now, as we see in this age of chaos, and since COVID started, since 2020, everything has been changing with the education system, the workplace. You could feel something has changed. I even saw this in my recent travels to different states in the US and to England, that their society is changing in many ways. How do you point this out on how to find balance and adapt to this change?
Yeah, well, I make the comment in my latest book, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, that our Western society is actually very extreme and tends to go from one extreme to another. So if we look back over the last 50 years or so, we can see that it goes from the sort of extreme left to the extreme right and back again, and never really finds a middle ground, or not for long. And people think that they can swear allegiance to a political movement and that it will in some way represent them, but even the political movements themselves are always changing. Their ideas are always changing. Their beliefs are always changing. The people they support are always changing. And so many views of the left today are what the right believed years ago, and vice versa.
Yes.
So there's no salvation in politics, despite what a large percentage of people may feel. So finding balance in this world of chaos, I think, first of all, we have to sort of step back from the world of politics, the world of algorithms that are always trying to make us angry and hateful, and start to work on ourselves and be less concerned with what other people are doing and more concerned about our own actions. So I think that's the first thing. In regard to how we can do this, I mean, personally, I always recommend that people develop their intellect, their body, and develop a spiritual practice as well. We find that most people in the West, at best, develop 2 out of the 3. And usually we develop the intellect, and we make the mistake of thinking of that as the mind. But when people develop the intellect alone, it doesn't make them nice or passive or even intelligent. It usually makes them very intellectually aggressive. And so they go after other people intellectually and try to do damage to other people through their words or their intellects or their arguments, which are always biased and skewed. And so I think as a beginning point, we have to recognize that we're a mind, body, and spirit, and we have to cultivate all 3 of those. And in regard to each of them, just very briefly, the intellect, read philosophy, read pre-modern texts. You can read, good modern authors as well that will help you to get out of this quagmire that we're in. I hope I'm one of those authors, but certainly look at ancient texts, ancient philosophy, pre-modern works to get a different perspective on life, a different understanding of how things are. I would also say, take an interest in culture, go to museums, understand that the world as it is today is just a snapshot, and it's going to change completely within 15 years. What we believe will be unrecognizable, as it always is. Every 15 years, there's a new ideology, essentially. And so take an interest in culture as well, ancient culture, other cultures. In regard to the body, I would definitely say, you want to, especially men in particular, get a little stronger, work out, practice a martial art if you can, learn self-defense, have an understanding of self-defense. Maybe also, if people are not interested in that, they could practice yoga or at least some kind of physical exercise. Or if they're too elderly to practice something less strenuous, at least make sure you go out for a walk every day and try and eat healthily. If nothing else, in regard to the spirit, obviously have some kind of meditation or prayer practice that you can do every day. Think about the divine, think about death and mortality, and and do that every day.
Yes, brother. And thank you for sharing that, because right now what I see is a society that's lacking in any kind of spiritual discipline. They don't have any spiritual practices. They're more divisive and more aggressive with one another. As we see in cities across America, a lot of the inner cities have a rise in crime, rise in domestic violence. There's a lot of things that are falling apart in society, which goes to my next question, Brother Angel, is how do you see, like I tell my parents and grandparents that I envy the time when in their time, people were simpler, people were getting married, having children. So right now with my generation, that's very hard because people are lacking the aspect of commitment, discipline, real love. How do you see this next phase of relationships going for men in terms of this age of chaos? And how can we find that balance? Because if all of this stops, humanity basically comes to a standstill if people are not getting together anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I don't know if you know, but not only is testosterone declining, but so is semen count. So at some point around 2045, it's predicted a lot of countries in the West will not be able to reproduce at all. So we're going to face a definite crisis there. But in regard to dating, I think just in many areas that included, I think eventually we'll see a real split between those who simply believe whatever they are told by the media and act on it and behave in stranger and stranger ways that are very unnatural to them and become angrier and more sort of disillusioned but blaming other people. And then I think we'll see people, more and more people that are checking out of that and saying, I'm not going to go with the latest ideology, whatever it is, tomorrow, and I'm going to return to sort of ancient principles or pre-modern principles that have sustained human beings for probably hundreds of thousands of years. And so I think that you will see more people who are incredibly promiscuous, who act in really peculiar ways that are damaging to them, take drugs, alcohol, and really make their lives a mess. And I'm not saying that from a moral perspective. I never say anything from a moral perspective. People can do whatever they want, but they're going to be unhappier and unhappier. And then we'll see more people that say, no, I'm only going to be in committed relationships. And in regard to dating, and men will make sure that they're physically a bit stronger. And there'll be a kind of return to pre-modern values while existing in this society. And that might create some other kinds of problems, you never know. But I think there will be a big split. And the majority will go with flow, but there will be a sizable minority that decides to live in a more authentic way, I think.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you explained that in such a beautiful and vivid manner, that we are living in a time of change and people have to take these things seriously on the aspects of
Yeah.
discipline and spirituality, which goes to my next question, Brother Angel. Right now, we see human interaction getting lesser and lesser. People are scared to get together, meet with each other.
Hmm.
How do you see this
Yeah.
infuse of technology and artificial intelligence kind of infusing its way into the human family? Where I remember in high school, I remember reading a story where they said it would be a time in human history where outside everything would be robotic and artificial intelligence, and humans would
Hmm.
not be allowed to interact with each other beyond a certain limit. Now, do you see that happening? Where I don't know if I can prove this, but you know how sometimes when when you're having a conversation and you're speaking and you're scrolling through and you find the products that you were thinking about. So
Right. Yeah. Of
right now,
course.
what
Yeah.
happened to me, what I didn't speak of anything, I didn't mention it, but I was thinking about
Hmm.
something, and it looks like the phone read my mind. So how do you see this AI and human interactions getting lesser and lesser? How do you see this going into this age of chaos?
Yeah, well, clearly there's a push to make the social media, the internet, and of course AI an even bigger part of our lives, to the point where it will really just consume us.
Hmm.
And of course, it's going to have an extraordinary effect on Western society. Already it's predicted that truckers will be replaced by automated vehicles. And you think, well, only, many people would think, well, I don't care because I'm in a position that can't be replaced by artificial intelligence. But it only takes a few percentage of people to be employed. You think maybe like 20%. And then that's going to have a huge knock-on effect on other industries, that those people will no longer be buying products or services. So then people in other sectors will be made unemployed, or it will be impossible to get a job in those sectors. And you won't want to quit if you do get one, or you won't want to get fired. So you'll be much more cautious about what you do, even what you say in private or say on the internet. So there'll be much more self-censorship than there is already. But yeah, certainly with AI, there's a potential for massive knock-on effects, even with a relatively small amount of people being replaced by AI. So I think it's, I mean, and beyond that, of course, going down this road where we're creating machines that are more intelligent than us, but don't have a soul. This seems like a really bad idea, and it's probably going to have catastrophic effects eventually. So we'll have to see. But presumably, there will always be a certain number of holdouts and renegades and rebels who may be able to use this technology um, against itself in some way. But I think we're going to need people who are a little gutsier at least 30 or 40 years from now if the human race is going to survive.
Yes, I agree with you absolutely that we have to have a society that's actually brave and is honorable about their
Yeah,
word, being men of their
yeah,
word in an age of chaos, honoring their brotherhoods, honoring their loved ones, their friendships, which goes to this really beautiful example that you gave in the book from the English perspective about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And the Green Knight
right,
reminded me from the Sufi perspective a lot about Al-Qidr, the Green Man.
right,
So
yeah, yeah.
how do you display this aspect of the Green Knight and Al Qidr, and how in a society the aspect of keeping your word and being honorable, like in that story it was
Yeah.
displayed perfectly. Like if you display your honor and you're an honorable individual, everything in
Mhm.
your life will align perfectly. But how do you detail that to a society today who's all about materialism and getting more out of somebody else, or being envious, or those kind of things which breaks
Yeah.
relationships? How do you restore that
Mhm.
aspect of honor in this world?
Yeah, so just to briefly mention what the story of Sir Gawain is all about. very briefly, cutting out most of the details. So it's set in King Arthur's court one Christmas time when a giant green knight bursts in and interrupts the festivities, and makes a strange wager with the knights and says, anyone here can take my axe and chop off my head, so long as I can do the same to him a year from now. And this is a very peculiar thing to say, and the knights are very worried about this. But finally, Sir Gawain, one of the younger knights, steps forward, takes the axe, chops off the Green Knight's head, and then sees the Green Knight pick up his own head, and tell him to meet him at the Green Chapel a year from now, and rides off. And Sir Gawain doesn't know where the Green Chapel is, but he goes out into the wilderness to find it, and to find, ultimately, we must believe, to find his own death. Although he doesn't die in the end, it would be a very reasonable assumption to believe that you are going to be killed. And you think, well, why didn't he just run away? And of course, he's implored not to go, and he could have gone somewhere else and saved his skin and not taken that risk. But he goes anyway, and he goes because he said he was going to go. And of course, in our day and age, keeping your word is absolutely essential. But of course, again, if we look at politics and public figures more broadly, but certainly at politicians, we find that they promise one thing before they're elected and do the opposite once they're in power. And then worse than that, I would say, then all of the people that voted for them make excuses for their behavior. And I think in a way that's worse, because we can understand one person lying. Maybe there are more pressures on him than he imagined or whatever. But, when you see millions of people rallying behind this person who blatantly lied and making excuses for it, I think that's reprehensible. But it's common. But, why do we need to keep our word? And many people clearly feel that they don't have to keep their word. But for ourselves, one of the main reasons why we have to keep our word is that, if you get used to the idea of saying, oh, sure, I'll do that for you, and then you don't do it, essentially you get used to the idea that you're not someone who tells the truth, and not just to other people, but you don't keep your word. So when you want to improve yourself, you're not going to do it. If you want to get healthy, if you want to work out 3 times a week and you haven't worked out for a while, and you're going to make promises to yourself, oh, I'll do it, but you never will, because deep down that you're just someone who lies and says things and makes promises and breaks them. And a lot of people, I've noticed, actually, will make very big promises to themselves. I've met a couple of guys a few guys like this, but one in particular I can think of. He had a very bad back injury, had a very weak back, and was hobbling around like an old man. And when he got better, I saw him one day and I said, maybe you should think about doing some planks or something to strengthen your back. And he laughed and he said to me, I have a 2-hour workout session all worked out. It's, perfect. And then as he walked off, he said to me, I'm not kidding. He said, one day I'll get around to it. Because that big promise of a 2-hour workout, it's meant to be so big that he can't go home and do it every day. There'll always be an excuse for him not to do that. If he said, I've got a 10-minute workout, there's no excuse. So we need to keep our word to other people, but we need to do it for ourselves as much as anything else, so that we can know that when we say, I'm going to do this for me to improve myself, even though it means some kind of sacrifice, that we're actually going to do it. And certainly, of course, when it comes to other people, if you want to have strong bonds with other people or real friendship, you need to keep your word. Obviously, there are sometimes emergencies, things happen, but as a general rule, we should try to keep our word. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely right. We do need an honorable society today, because that will restore this human fallacy that we're in, where everything is kind of falling apart in many ways. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your insight on the aspect of why we need to be honorable men and women in today's society in this age of chaos, which goes to my next question, Brother Angel. If today was your last day on this earth, what would you tell the people that love you dearly, that you love dearly, here, England, all over the world? what message would you leave for humanity as we're finding ourselves falling apart as it seems
Yeah.
day by day and year by year?
Yeah, well, I think we have to learn from the best examples, and no one is really a saint, but
Mm.
we can take the best of different people and try and prove ourselves and be inspired, not jealous or envious of other people, but be inspired by other people that are better than us. And certainly, I can say that I think one of the reasons I've been able to improve myself over the years, and have books published. And last week I was in Los Angeles giving a talk, which was really great. And the reason I'm able to do those things is really that I've been inspired by other people, and I've taken the best of other people. And it's not that you don't want to become those other people, but you want to allow their good influences to mold you. So if someone's stronger than you, maybe you can be inspired by that and work out more than you were. Or if somebody is intelligent and thoughtful, you can try and be thoughtful as well. And you can see that, okay, they're not reacting when they hear something they don't like, let's say from the opposite political side. Maybe they're seriously, unbiasedly considering it. I can do the same. I don't have to be biased and reacting all the time. So whatever it might be, we can see these good examples in other people and adopt the best behavior. And the things that are bad, of course, we can leave aside. And one of the big problems, and there are many problems today in our culture, but one of them is that now people feel that if there is a bad word or something upsetting in a book of, let's say, 500 pages, they can't read that book because there's one word in it or one page that is upsetting or politically not what they like. And you should be able to read a book and reject 98% of it and take the 2% that is good, or know someone who's maybe not a good guy, or you've come across someone like that, but they have one good quality. Well, why wouldn't you want to adopt that? You can reject all the rest, and at least have respect for that person's one good point as well, because you don't want to go around in a state of hatred. You want to go around in a state of being inspired by people, and realizing that, okay, some other people even might be behaving reprehensibly. There's probably something going wrong in their lives, some emotional trauma that they're going through that they're acting out. They're not doing it, they're not responding in the best way possible, but let's not be too judgmental about them. Let's just take the good and leave the bad.
Mm-hmm. That is absolutely true. And I thank you, my brother, for sharing that, which goes to my next question, Brother Angel, is right now we see a lot of initiatic paths in decline in terms of the numbers. How would you advise men who are trying to find the right path to self-mastery? And right now in this age of chaos, everything is changing, let's say from physical meetings to like online virtual seminars or online meetings. How would you define to men who are looking for a path and ask them, what are you exactly looking for in the initiatic path? And how would you direct somebody who's looking for the truth in their own way?
Yeah. So one of the traps, I think, of people who are looking at initiatic paths is they often get very enamored with certain techniques or certain symbols, and a kind of glamour that surrounds some of these groups.
Mm-hmm.
And this ultimately is probably not going to do you much good. I think really what you want to be around is people that can be a good example for you. And I've seen initiatic groups where quite honestly I wouldn't want to be around any of the members who struck me as kind of just weird and kind of dysfunctional. And the problem with initiatic paths, particularly in the West, is that the people are often above average intelligence, but they're often stuck. And people will, for example, get into some kind of occult movement or occult group, and it can kind of bump up their queue because they're exposed to new ideas. And so, 2 years of being exposed to, let's say, the Kabbalah, plus yoga might be in there, some kind of ritual, a bit of history, is probably going to make them more intelligent. But unfortunately, after about 10 years, they're much less intelligent than when they started, because now it's become this worldview that everything must be slotted into. And, so they stop thinking. I would say that, Freemasonry, I think, is a much better option, because sure, you're not going to be given any techniques of like mystical meditation, but you are going to be around, hopefully, around men who are moral, pretty decent, above average intelligence, hopefully are engaged in life. And of course, it depends where you are. I would think that that's the baseline, but if you're in a bigger city, you'll be able to meet men who are interested in the esoteric philosophy and so on as well. So I think that's actually a better path. And again, I would say this, working on yourself, mind, body, and spirit, and you're better off having a good example of manhood, or good example of behavior in the world, and of ethics and morality, than you are having techniques of mental transcendence around people who are kind of messed up, to be honest. Which is not to say that everyone in the occult is like that, because they're not, but there's a significant percentage that are. And another trap today is that a lot of these initiatic groups, quote unquote, are what Rene Guénon might have called counter-initiatic. And I'm not really a fan of Rene Guénon, but he has a really made a really good observation that there are these groups that pose as initiatic groups or orders, but are actually sort of taking people away from the spiritual path. And so, consequently, people would join these groups thinking it's all about spirituality and deity or gods or goddesses or whatever it may be. But when you look at their worldview, it's really basically a kind of ritualized version of the latest politics. And and their real focus is political. Well, you go and join a political group if that's what you're interested in that case. So yeah, it's difficult, but I think especially today, we might end up having to join different groups to develop the body. You probably need to get a trainer or join a martial arts group or a yoga school or whatever it was. In regard to the intellect, hopefully, if you don't join some kind of intellectual group, which you might, philosophical organization, hopefully you'll have friends that you can discuss ideas with, rather than discussing other people's shortcomings. You can discuss ideas and philosophy and spirituality and sacred texts. Luckily, I have a few friends like that, and certainly when we've met, we've discussed that. So that's good. And and then spirituality, maybe joining some kind of initiatic school, whether it's Sufism or Freemasonry. But I would say you probably want to go with one that has a bit of a better reputation and also focuses on the ethics and morals as well, because it's not very sexy. We might not like that, but it's really the foundation of everything else.
Yes, I agree with you, my brother, absolutely. And I hope those that are listening to this, you're taking heed to the teachings that Brother Angel is offering, especially for men who are struggling to know thyself in this chaotic age and where everything has kind of been turned upside down. Which goes to my next question is, I heard this saying from a Sufi school of thought that hard times create good men and good times create weak men. How do you define this, my brother, in the teachings that you offer in your book and in this age of chaos, where right now you basically have hard times, but then good times have created a lot of weak individuals as well in Western society? How do you turn this around?
Yeah, so that saying, which Joe Rogan recently posted on Instagram as well, it reminds me of Ibn Khaldun. You may know the historian, medieval historian from Tunis, who studied, or sociologist really, who studied North African and Arabic societies. And he observed that, he said that a dynasty would only last 3 generations. We might call it 3 stages. So 3 generations. And he said in the first generation, a warrior band will swoop down on a decaying dynasty and will take it over. But the warriors won't really live it up. They won't partake in a luxurious, decadent lifestyle. Instead of sleeping in a bed, they'll continue to sleep on the floor. They live the quote unquote desert values, or what Americans would call frontier values. So they still retain this sort of harshness, this stoicism, even though they're now surrounded by luxury. They remain stoic. They remain living the desert values, not the values of the city. And then in the second generation, the people enjoy luxury. They're born into luxury, but they still have a secret desire for the return of the desert values, and they admire the warrior and secretly want that to return. And then in the third generation, the people love luxury and are preoccupied with safety, with their own safety. And at that point, according to Ibn Khaldun, a new band of warriors will swoop down, seeing that the dynasty is weak and can't defend itself, and will take over. And at that point, will initiate a new cycle. So it's very much like that quote you mentioned. Sorry, what was your question? I forget.
It was basically, Brother Angel, how do you define men today? Like an example for this quote. How do you define them getting back to becoming good, strong men again?
Yeah, how do we become strong? Well, I think the first thing to do is to acknowledge that our society is actually very frail and really dangling by some threads, and we think it will go on forever. But that's what they thought in the Soviet Union just before it collapsed as well, and that's what they thought in Rome before it collapsed into anarchy as well. And so I would say we have to begin by acknowledging that we live in a very tenuous situation. And we have a lot of luxury, and we will enjoy that, I'm sure. We were born into it, and now we have even more with the internet, of course. So everything is at the click of a button. We can order whatever we like whenever we want. If I want some obscure thing at 2 a.m, I can go onto a website and order it somewhere, and it will arrive 2 days later. And that's amazing and wonderful. But all of this could just completely collapse overnight. You look at the last couple of years, and I don't know how it was with you, but certainly in New York City, when I was going through there, seeing it completely empty. I walked through Times Square, and I was the only person there, apart from I think 1 or 2 homeless people. I mean, I've never seen that before. And I saw someone injecting drugs at 7 a.m. I haven't seen that in 20 years. And I walked through, all of the shops are boarded up. There's rioting and protests, and a definite sense that this city could collapse. And I'm sure it was like that in other cities as well, and some may have been even worse. And some people would like it to collapse, of course, because they think that if it collapses, they'll get free iPads and they won't have to pay for anything, and they'll be at the top of society. People like that are just swept aside in revolutionary moments, and they never wind up on top. And in fact, if you look at the Soviet Union, you find that actually a lot of the officials under the Tsar managed to be officials under the communist state, and the same with the Nazis. They managed to, some of them were put on trial, but many of them got very prestigious positions in the anti-Nazi government that followed. So it typically is people that have power. Some of them will be got rid of for sure, but the rest will remain in power. So it's not It's not like the underdog is elevated, far from it.
Mm.
But yeah, I think first of all we have to recognize that that our society is very tenuous and could go in a very bad direction at any time, especially when you look at the trillions of dollars we're racking up and all kinds of other problems. A society that's increasingly divided. There's IQ is declining in the West. Creativity is measurably declining, or
Mhm.
CQ, and CQ is a better predictor of who will become an author, doctor, lawyer, and so on, engineer, than IQ. So we won't even be capable of solving problems in the future at some point. And certainly even solving them today is a problem, because we know that politics intervenes and says, oh, you're a beast if you don't agree with the prevailing ideology. Well, if the prevailing ideology could help us, we'd have all the solutions. So you need to think outside the box, and there's a pressure not to. So I say first, recognize we're in a very tenuous situation that could go bad at any time. And I would sort of say, prepare for that. And that might mean, again, you might want to learn some kind of self-defense or martial art, or not think that you might always be able to rely on the state for your protection, because you probably won't be able to. And really, I would say try to develop yourself as a whole. If you're someone who can think, if you're someone who can defend yourself, and if you're someone, let's say in regard to spirituality, who can keep your head when others are losing theirs, you're going to be in a much better position for survival and getting on okay after any nastiness has occurred. Or if alternatively, maybe there'll just be a slow decline, but that might be just as bad, of course. So if we see more and more cities just becoming more like Detroit, not to pick on Detroit, but where there's high crime, high unemployment, most people wouldn't really want to live there. I'm sure there are nice areas as well, but if cities become more and more like that, then we'll need to be, much more fully developed in ourselves to get by again. So, yeah, I would say,
I agree. I agree with
yeah,
you, my brother. Absolutely.
yeah,
Which goes to my next question, brother Angel, is right now, especially what I've seen in the Western world, is people that are kind of rebelling against the system.
hmm,
They're benefiting off of
yeah,
the country, its services. Let's say in
hmm,
the Islamic law or Masonic law, they tell you to respect the country that you live in, to
hmm,
respect the
yeah,
customs and traditions and follow it.
right,
So right now
yeah,
many groups that I've seen in the Western world that are basically complaining that the West is evil and the West is doing
hmm,
this, they're
hmm,
doing this, but they're benefiting
hmm,
off of the lifestyle
yeah,
and benefits and freedoms that the West is giving them. How do you
yeah,
define these kind of people in terms of bringing age in an age of chaos, like men like you and I that are on the
hmm,
path of revolutionaries and fighting for freedom and bringing people together, regardless of race or religion? And you have this
right,
other group that's complaining about all of these
hmm,
things, but the
yeah.
country that they're living in is giving them that kind of life.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And nothing could be more Western than complaining about the country you live in and saying it's the worst country in the world, but never leaving it. It's like no one's stopping
Exactly.
you from leaving. Go away if that's how you feel. I mean, I left my country, and I don't hate England, but I managed to get here, and it wasn't easy. It was a struggle for sure, but I managed to do it. And if your country doesn't suit you, leave, and just let the people that want to live there. No one's forcing you. No one wants you there, so go. But I think yeah, this is a really fascinating phenomenon. And uh, although such people present themselves as being against the system, in my mind, they actually are the system. Typically, I mean, even if you look at celebrities, for example, or politicians, typically they're not going to say this country is great. They're going to say this country is terrible, while they benefit from it, and are really the 1%. In a sense, it's a way of saying, well, I'm moral and intelligent, so I deserve all all of the perks of this society. And I guess that's always happened. I'm sure we could think of, corrupt Christian priests who acted in a similar way. And now that religion is kind of dead in the West, or Christianity has lost its grip, we see this among a kind of new priest class made up of celebrities and politicians, and people, of course, emulate that. And so you have young people who are emulating this, saying, yes, it is the worst, while they benefit from it as well. Right. And one of the very dangerous, well, there are many dangerous things about it, but I think this movement, people interpret it in different ways, but I think one way to interpret it is that it is an anti-creativity movement. And that sounds like an extremely strange thing to say, but the people, of course, that they attack are anyone who thinks actually outside of the box, yes. Anyone who thinks differently. Notice that, for example, with the environmentalist movement, they will say the governments are corrupt, so the governments must fix it. It's like, well, why would you want corrupt people to fix it? Why don't you support these? I don't know much about environmentalism, but I know that there are inventors out there who have created all kinds of things. One young guy has created technology to clean up the seas. It just floats around cleaning up the pollution from the sea. Why don't you support that guy then? Why doesn't he ever get mentioned if you're so interested in the environment? Why don't you, instead of going to protest in 1 million people in the city, why don't you get all of those people and clean up the rivers if that's your thing? What a great example. Why don't you change 1 million people doing that? All of the companies will start following you because they'll see the trend. But so in a way, it enforces the system, and saying you're against the system is pretty much a guarantee that someone is really in favor of the system that we have now. They're in favor of the hierarchy. Notice that they always want government to intervene. They always want huge businesses to intervene. All of the problems that have been created by these companies, they support. They continue to support these companies and want them to be involved. And anyone who thinks outside of the box is immediately attacked. And not just in terms of technology, but you think now it's the idea that, well, if one culture has influenced another, this is very bad. No, I'm sorry. This has been going on for thousands of years. Every culture, apart from maybe a tribe in the Amazon that's been isolated, every other culture has influenced each other's directly or indirectly. We can't get around it. That's culture. That's how we move past rubbing sticks together to get fire and inventing the wheel. And, the idea that we should not be influenced by other cultures is clearly a kind of attack on humanity itself, and an attack on intelligence, obviously, and on creativity, and an attack on people who actually could bring solutions to the problems that they complain about, but they don't want solutions, they want problems, because then they feel like I'm moral and intelligent and I'll be elevated to the top of the hierarchy if I continue to emulate those people at the top. They're not rebels at all. They are the status quo, and it's going to take other people who will not be endorsed by the media as they are, who will not be liked by Twitter, to think differently and to give different opinions and to set a different example, which I think you're doing. I hope I'm doing in various ways.
My brother, you have been a pinnacle example in that. And that reminds me of this verse that I read in the Holy Quran, which tells us about the divine and God creating us in different tribes and groups so that we can learn from one another. And that is right. Absolutely true. What you're saying is right now, we have these people who are saying that they're the friend of the people, or they're helping humanity in terms of like those that are in high positions. But from the backside, they're benefiting off of humanity's suffering. Mm-hmm. And they can offer these different solutions, but they're choosing not to. So I'm very, very happy you gave that clarification, because right now, that is going on in workplaces that I've seen in America, in different school places, different groups and institutions, where if you give the truth, and if you're giving something that's actually benefiting everybody, they're going to see you as the target and as the enemy, which definitely goes to my next
Yeah, that's
question.
right.
And I agree with absolutely everything that you said, which goes to my next question, Brother Angel, is right now there is this age of mass resignations where people are leaving their
Mhm.
jobs and everything in a very large number.
Yeah.
How as men, like men of today, have to deal with this as the workplace is changing for the ones that have a spouse, or they have families, they have children. And right now, the aspect of being an honorable man, making a living, the
Yeah.
mass resignations, everything
Mhm.
is changing. So how do you
Yeah.
see this next generation, especially in this age of chaos, in terms of a
Yeah.
man who wants to make a living?
Yeah, well, I think that we're definitely going to need to be more and more flexible as we go forward. And by flexible, I don't mean giving in to whatever is demanded. I mean, trying to predict what's coming down the tracks and being prepared for it, really.
Mhm.
And, from that perspective, I would definitely advise younger people to, or anyone, but especially younger people, to really have a range of skills and to although this may sound counterintuitive, to really make sure that they have the basic skills and excel in the basic skills. A lot of people can't really express themselves in an email or in words or speaking, and that's very basic. They can't get up and say something in public. They can't have a conversation with someone, and no matter what profession or field you're in, you have to be able to express yourself and you have to be able to get on with people. And really, that's probably a better qualification than anything else. It will make you much more flexible and fluid, and you'll be able to go into different areas much more easily. Even if you're in a particular field like design or engineering or whatever it may be, maybe you end up doing something else, but those skills, being able to speak, being able to converse with someone,
Mhm.
being able to problem solve, being able to write accurately, it'll serve you well. But I would also say, no matter what profession someone is in, to always now make sure that you have not only those skills, but maybe you are pursuing something on the side, just in case there's a kind of radical shift. We were talking about AI earlier. We really don't know how the world is going to change. So it's not that you should have a plan B, but try to be um,
Mhm.
have some diverse skills that you can call upon if necessary.
Yes, definitely, my brother. And I thank you for that, because I was thinking right now everything is kind of changing in terms of the workplace.
Yeah,
You definitely hit the nail on that you have to be flexible and diverse
yeah,
in your abilities, in your skills, and your thoughts, which
yeah,
which goes to my next question is, in today's age of chaos, how would you advise men to stay calm in moments, especially the media and everything that's putting one against each other, where they're telling us to be
yeah,
divided on race, religion, politics,
yeah.
and they're trying to get reactions out of us to get us to hate each other,
Right.
which kind of seeps into
That's right.
initiatic paths as well, where I see
Hmm.
brothers in initiatic paths who, when they have differences, they start fighting with each other. So
Hmm.
how do we
Sure.
stay calm, my brother, in this age of chaos from your
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah. So we really do have to take a step back from politics. And I would say, even if you look at politics over the last 10, 20, 30 years, we can see that what we believe today and what we say is unquestionable today, we didn't even think about 5 years ago. And our opinions are always changing. And what we believe today, we didn't believe 10 years ago. What we believed 10 years ago, we didn't believe 20 years ago. And people become hysterical about this as if it's a religious doctrine that can't be questioned. 10
Mm,
years from now, they won't believe it. They won't even remember that they believed it. So we need to take a step back and realize that a lot of it is trying to get us emotionally hooked. The media wants us fighting, the politicians want us fighting, because then we will keep checking back the media, we'll keep checking social media, we'll keep believing whatever our favorite politician says, even when it's a total lie, or we'll give them a pass continually because we'll say, well, he's not as bad as the other guy on the other side. And so we need to take a step back from politics. I would say turn off the media, don't watch it. You maybe check it once every couple of weeks or something, but don't check it every day. You'll find that every catastrophe that is being represented will have blown over within 2 weeks. So you don't get hooked on the media. Instead, focus on your own behavior, how you can improve yourself. And again, that comes back to realizing, okay, I can take the best of anyone, and leave aside what isn't good. I would say, one good way to step back from the media is if you do have a political side that you support, or political views that are very fundamental to you, well, then you should seek out the best representatives of the other side, the most intelligent people who would argue against it, and listen to what they say and carefully consider it. Not so that you can convert, but so that you can realize that, oh, these people on the other side aren't actually crazed beasts that want to kill me. They actually have opinions based on their own life history, or based on their own research, and they're actually intelligent people. Not everyone in politics is intelligent, so that might be difficult, but it can be done. So that I would suggest that would be a good idea. Also, when you think about even politics over the last century or so, these different sides previously sort of borrowed ideas from each other, which is probably why they could come to some kind of solution at some point. So, we do need to be not promiscuous in our thinking, but we should be able to read different things. And again, take the 1% or the 2% that's valuable, and discard what might not be, whether that's from a religion or a philosophy, or from something else.
I agree, absolutely. And you're right. We need to find that balance and be able to learn from each other, because the only
Yeah,
way
definitely.
humanity is going to move forward is when we come together and work with each other. If we
Yeah,
all
that's
come
right.
together, my brother, we work with each other, try to find a common ground. That's the only way I believe we're going to move forward. And I'm glad that you confirmed that for me in your teachings as well. I
Yeah,
would like
yeah.
to ask you, for the audience that's listening, what other thoughts and teachings you can give us from this book, which can help not just men, but women and anybody
Mhm.
of this initiatic path help find that balance.
Yeah.
So please, my brother, any other teachings or closing thoughts?
Sure, sure. Well, so although the book is about men ostensibly, I'm not someone who believes that that women have a significantly different role. I think in this day and age, and in the future, it will be necessary for both men and women to be able to be well-rounded. Personally, I think I've talked about martial arts and self-defense. I would recommend even every woman be able to do some martial arts and learn some self-defense. And I would think that most men would actually welcome that. So, really it's about proportion. Men might want to be very muscular. Very few women would want to be very muscular, but they can still learn to be able to defend themselves as well, nevertheless. But yeah, I think, well, I'm sure there's much we could discuss, but the book itself really is the journey of the individual who's able to develop these different sides of himself, the sort of martial side, and then the civilizational side. And we find this in pretty much every civilization, whether it's Miyamoto Musashi practicing samurai warrior who also practiced calligraphy and painting and gardening, or Egil Skallagrimsson, the Viking warrior who was also a renowned poet, or even in the Persian martial arts, where Ali is regarded as both the greatest warrior and an example of the warrior, but also the greatest mystic and an example of the mystic.
Yeah.
He's both. So we really need to develop these different sides. And so, I think there are different things we can do. Obviously, you want to work on yourself, take a step back from politics, read philosophy, read religious texts, read books that are intelligent from today, but try and get a different perspective on life. Everything we believe today, what we will not believe in a decade or 15 years from now. Focus on yourself, strengthen your body, practice an art if you can, some kind of art, some kind of discipline. Be disciplined, practice your art every day if possible, or at least 4 times a week, I would say. And and surround yourself with the best people that you can, people who are intelligent and discuss ideas, and rather than discussing other people. So I think those would be the foundations, really. And in regard to fear and remaining calm, try to push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, take manageable risks, and and try to just develop yourself and get out of your comfort zone a little bit, and in ways that if it fails, you'll still be okay. You don't want to risk everything on a long shot, obviously, but think about martial arts training. You're going to be practicing incrementally. You're not going to be fighting on your first lesson. That comes later after you've learned the techniques. So it's sort of incremental risk management, and we need to live our lives like that as well. And again, as they say, take the best from people, respect other people, respect the best parts of other people, so that you can embody these really good attributes yourself. Respect those who are worthy of respect, where they're worthy of it. Try to make this mind focused more on the positive and on the possible, and remove yourself from the negative and from people saying it can't be done.
Thank you, Brother Angel. And it goes to my last question, and I'm very grateful you brought up Imam Ali, the aspect of being a warrior and a mystic. So for somebody, let's say, who's too nice, how do you restore that aspect of the warrior within them when it comes time to defend themselves and their family? And how about the one who is too aggressive, who's on the warrior side? How do you bring him down to earth and help him find something soft to keep him humble and to find that mysticness around him? So both sides.
Right. Yeah, so actually Plato discussed this. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato said that education should be through wrestling, music, and philosophy. And he said, people who just study wrestling, they become too aggressive, uncouth, and people who just study music become too soft and too emotional. And so you have to study both. And, I think that is true. If you can practice something that's hard and harsh and going to push your body and push your mind when you're working out, maybe getting a few bruises or whatever it may be, and enabling you to realize, okay, it's just a bruise, it'll go away in a few days, it's no big deal. That's good. But you need to sort of temper that with understanding the arts of civilization, practice music or practice an art, go to a museum and see culture of the last few thousand years, have an appreciation for beauty, and practice a spiritual practice, meditation, prayer, etc.
Thank you, Brother Angel. And I'm just having a great time, my brother, just listening to you. I'm in awe, and things are just popping up in my mind as my head is spinning from listening to your wisdom. As you brought up Plato, another thing came up in my mind, a quote by Plato, which says that a man's real measure, a true man's real measure, is what he does with power when it's given to him.
Right. Yeah.
So in today's world, my brother, as we see religious leaders, political leaders, leaders of initiatic groups that have their own leadership, how can they sustain the next evolution of humanity when they're given power in this chaotic age, on how to make sure it's passed on correctly?
Yeah, well, I don't see any real examples of great leadership in politics or even in culture. But I think, nevertheless, that one good thing about modern technology is that we ourselves can become leaders, which is not to say that we can become, powerful in society, but we can set an example that will help other people ascend and develop themselves. Or it's like you making YouTube videos or writing a book or writing articles or creating some kind of group where we can discuss ideas. All of this is valuable, and we don't have to we don't have to follow corrupt individuals or support corrupt individuals. We can be leaders in our own lives and in the circles we move in, if nothing else. I don't think many politicians or leaders in society are really capable of steering us in a great direction, and it's something we have to do ourselves.
I agree, absolutely. My brother, I love you dearly. Thank you for everything and the wisdom you provided. And I encourage everyone, please, if you could do anything in today's world, get this book, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, Being a Man in an Age of Chaos. I will put all of the links in the description below, including Brother Angel Millar's website, his YouTube channel, the links to this book where you can buy it. And I would like to ask Brother Angel, is where can the viewers find you and support you, and what other kind of spiritual services that you offer? And I also want to give Brother Angel full rights to this video interview where he can upload it and use it wherever he sees fit.
Thank you. Yeah, so, I do some mentoring, particularly with men, but it doesn't have to be. And also hypnosis. I'm actually a qualified hypnotist. So I do some hypnosis with people, usually for people who want to improve their lives in some way, or it can be more specific than that. Hypnosis is generally, when you experience it, you're generally in a very relaxed state and visualizing certain things that are going to help you move forward in your life. Yeah, so those would be the other things, and of course writing. Those would be the main things. So, yeah.
All
and
right.
people can find me at my website, angelmillar.com, ANGELMILLAR.com. Or, my books are pretty available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of those places. So.
Thank you, Brother Angel. Thanks again for providing us this education, for the love and wisdom and everything that you have provided. And I hope all of that are listening today, you have taken heed to all of the teachings that Brother Angel has given us. And please check out his books, check out his works, go to his website and get a spiritual consultation if you need one. And just to basically take heed on this age that we're living in, that we're going to get through this only if we work together and have the mind to do so. So thank you, my brother, and much love to you and yours.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, much love to you. Good speaking with you.